Attention Skyway passengers. Please remain seated and keep your hands and arms inside the Skyway cabin.
The future has arrived. The future has arrived today.
Your attention, please. The Walt Disney World Railroad now boarding for a scenic trip around
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your Walt Disney World information station. I am your host, Lou Mangello, and this is show number 355 for the week of March 23rd, 2014. I'm here to help you have the best possible Disney vacation experience and bring you a little bit of Disney magic wherever you are with this podcast, videos, blog, live broadcasts, audio tours, and much more. You can find it all over at WDWRadio.com. Also, be sure to visit Disney102.com where you can get a copy of my new book, 102 Ways to Save Money for and at Walt Disney World. It's now available as a downloadable PDF to read on your computer or any mobile device, as well as in print and on Kindle from Amazon.com, and now also from the Nook store as well. I know you're going to enjoy it and save money whether you're going for your first time or your 100th. In fact, I guarantee it. If you don't save money using the book, I will gladly refund your purchase price. And if you do like the book, please leave a review over on Amazon.com and tell your friends. For more information, sample pages, and links to where you can get it, visit Disney102.com. So this week, I invite you to journey with me aboard my Walt Disney World Wayback machine as we turn back the clock 15 years and visit the resort in 2001. We'll explore what was new and changed, what was lost, how things were different, what was being celebrated, and share stories of our own experiences during that time. I'll then have the answer to our last Walt Disney World trivia question of the week and pose a new chance for your chance to win a Disney prize package, including my brand new book. Then stay tuned for some updates and announcements, including updated event information and much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the WDW Radio Show. While I very much subscribe to Walt Disney's tenet of keep moving forward, I also like to look back sometimes to not only see where we've been, but maybe even get a glimpse as to what the future holds. So I invite you to please journey with me this week aboard my Walt Disney World Wayback machine as I set the dial to the year 2001, not the Space Odyssey, but 15 years ago in the vacation kingdom of the world. And accompanying me once again is the Watson to my Sherlock, the Sherman to my Peabody, the Incrediboy to my... Anyway, he is Ryan P. Wilson, also known as Warden Ryan P. Wilson Matua, Editor-in-Chief of the Main Street Gazette. Welcome back, buddy.
Jumbo. Are you ready for 2001, A Disney Odyssey?
I am. And, this is cool because oftentimes when we're doing the Wayback, we do specific attractions or shows or sort of group things together with a theme. But every now and then we've taken an entire year. I think we've done like one in the 70s and maybe one in the 80s. And I think this time we chose a time that's not really just a rounded number, sort of 15 years in the behind from where we are now. But I think it's an important year in terms of not just growth of the parks, but I think as we start to talk about what the sort of the theme of the celebration was, why the year was relatively significant.
You have that year of a milestone that not a lot of people really recognize or remember, and there wasn't a ton of change going on across the park. You're right, but for where the company was, for where Walt Disney World is, it is almost one of those turning points in the history of Walt Disney World.
And it's funny because as I was going back and starting to think about and list some of the things that had changed or expanded or opened that year, when I get to one of the things that we talk about, there was one thing that I keep remembering as this is the change that I remember of 2001 because it represented an expansion and also a bit of a loss, and it changed the dynamic of one of my favorite places in Walt Disney World, and I will just tease you with that. Because before I think we step foot into that specific moment in time in 2001, let's sort of take a look at what happened leading up to it, right? Because 3 years earlier, Walt Disney World's fourth theme park, Disney's Animal Kingdom, opens on Earth Day. It is very much a radical departure, to say the least, from that quote-unquote traditional concept of what a, again, air quotes, Magic Kingdom was, right? It really embraced this idea of edutainment on an entirely new level.
Absolutely, and it was made to look lived in. It was made to look like the real world. It wasn't, the ideal of a Main Street at the turn of the century. It wasn't potentially what tomorrow was or what a backlot looked like. It was a lived-in world, and it was explore every corner. And like you said, it was just 3 years prior to this, and then even then it wasn't completed because in 1999 you have the whole land of Asia that would open up.
Right. So 1999. Well, let's quickly step back. Also in 1998. There's additional expansion that I think not just happens in Walt Disney World, but sort of tacks onto Walt Disney World, right? Feature animation comes to Disney MGM Studios. All of a sudden now, these studios seem to be going down a long-term path of going to be a real working, long-term studio there. The Disney Cruise Line launches its first ship to Disney Magic, which to me has always been an extension of the Walt Disney World experience. It often takes place as a separate experience, but I think for a lot of people, Ryan, it's one that they tack on. The following year, you're right, we get additional expansion. We get All-Star Movies. We get Lanuba. Test Track finally opens after how many years of saying that it's going to open? 2 years ago, 1997. They promised it was going to be coming later that year. The Wonder Sets sale. The 15-month-long, and I know you agree with me, one of my favorite celebrations of all, the Millennium Celebration, expands into 2000 with new parades and special events and nighttime spectacles, really centered around a park that I know that we both love, which is Epcot.
Absolutely, and you could see them building the stage, and they're launching the cruise ships, and you're absolutely right. People they tie that on the beginning or end of a trip because that to tie into that whole we want to go adventuring, but at the same time we want to know what work with something that we're close to and we know. You have all these. It's just a massive period of expansion in that latter part of 1990s and early 2000, and it was almost like you get to the end of the Millennium Celebration. It's like, where do we go next?
Well, at this point, everybody's going, Michael Eisner's a genius. This guy's going to be with the company forever. Nobody's ever going to get rid of him. So.
Surely he's not going to make a misstep somewhere.
No, not at all. The man clearly has, focus and vision, and, nothing is possibly going to go horribly awry just a couple of years later. But let's sort of get into 2001, and we're going to sort of jump all over the board here. And maybe we'll sort of talk about boards and games. We'll sort of start there because there was a lot of new introductions. And in April, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Play It came to the Disney MGM Studios. And this was really a big deal because, for the first time, we've got, well, not really the first time, but in terms of the scope and just how closely the show and the set really resemble this very high-tech experience of the Regis Philbin hosted TV show. This gives guests a chance to get into that hot seat that, most people won't get a chance to do. And obviously the show was, ridiculously popular at the time. You're able to play for points, not dollars, but you could really win some cool prizes, right? Stuff that was exclusive to that attraction, whether it was hats and pins and jackets, to a Disney Cruise Line vacation.
Yeah, and you're right. It piggybacked off of the huge success of finally a primetime game show, and they had seen stuff like that before at the studios, and we're even looking back far enough that it was still Disney MGM Studios at that point. But you had they'd seen Hollywood Squares there before, other things, but this was the first time that the guests actually got to, like you said, sit in that hot seat, be part of that game, and come away. If you were had enough knowledge, with something really cool.
Yeah, and it really gave you the sense that you had that same sort of intensity and excitement and nerves as if you were taping the real show. And look, you talk about an attraction in terms of re-rideability or revisit ability. I mean, how many times would you go sometimes to see that show in a single day? Because you weren't just watching. It was really sort of the beginning of that interactive, non-passive type of experience. And you were playing for like real stuff. You were playing for not just a chance to get out in front of everybody and be shown up on the screen, but to actually have a chance to win, real prizes.
Yeah, and I think part of that is that music, that intense music that show, that Who Wants to Be a Millionaire had, that you just got your blood going when you got out there. But how many times have you and I talked about experiences like Sid Kahenga's trivia, that people come back time and time and again just to get the trivia right. This amplified that to exponentially. Yeah,
and you weren't obviously just playing against yourself. You were playing against the however many hundreds of people that were in there too. And I hate to admit, Ryan P. Wilson, I came close once at the very last one, but as time ran out, I came close, but I was never in the hot seat.
I never had that chance either. As much as running around up there, it sometimes takes a while to filter through all the files.
And people are now going, all right, Mr. Trivia Boy, you just lost all your credibility. Obviously, I don't know, but it was hard, man. I mean, but trivia was all over the place. I mean, it wasn't just obviously Walt Disney World trivia. It was, everything Disney and all kinds of just general trivia stuff.
Knowledge, right.
Yeah, it was very, very cool, and kids had fun, and I don't know why, and somewhere buried in my archives, I actually have one of the keypads, one of the ABCD keypads from the front of the seat. I don't know what I have it for, but that's if I couldn't win the game, I was going to take a piece of it home with me.
I think I have one of like the VIP passes for it or something like that, somewhere hanging on a lanyard. I don't know where, but it's in one of the drawers somewhere. Yeah,
and it was cool, and I miss stuff like that, we talk about the studios feeling like a studio. That really helped sort of, solidify that feeling, because you felt as though like you were, on a TV set, and there was real stuff going on. There was cameras everywhere, and there was that same type of excitement. And I kind of miss some of that a little bit. And I know we have it certainly to a very different degree with the American Idol experience.
Right, but you're right. It is those cameras. You are on the screen. It was in that set of that hot set one that we have right now, where everyone would go, and it was a big marquee attraction inside all these different studios. And now it kind of feels like you're right that since we lost that kind of an event, where is that guiding kind of force?
Right, and look, you have a better chance of me actually winning the cruise in Millionaire than you do me getting up to actually sing at the American Idol experience. So, not.
Oh no! Can you feel the love tonight? Come on!
Not going to happen in my lifetime. Trust me, you don't want to hear that. But speaking of game shows and TV shows, again, this was a time that the studios was a working studio, so there was a lot of real tapings that were going on there. The Rosie O'Donnell show, taped down there in February during Sweeps Month, did incredible afternoon ratings, I think partially because of where it was. Live with Regis and Kelly did 2 shows with Regis, and including one where he sort of was at the premiere of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Play It. Live with Regis and Kelly broadcast later on to kick off the 100 Years of Magic celebration. And even Michael J. Fox hosted a 100 Years of Magic show over on ABC Radio.
Yeah, it was one of those incredible times where everyone wanted to be there, and they found ways to get people there so that if they weren't going to have that celebrity guest there every day putting their hands in the pavement, they were going to have ways for you to actually feel like it was the living, breathing studio.
And I think for us as guests, that was always the unknown. That was the excitement, because they used to have sort of the star of the day and all these kind of things going on, but you really sort of got the sense that once you walked into that gate, there's a chance, like there's a real possibility that I might see a star walking around, or maybe they're going to be filming something other than Thunder in Paradise, and I may actually see a celebrity walking around this quote unquote backlot.
Definitely, and you had things like Super Soap Weekend happening at that time, where all the soap operas from General Hospital and All My Children, where the stars were there and they were discussing the shows and their characters and things like that. There was always that chance you were going to run into someone.
Right, and that really was what the identity of that park was when it first opened. Was this is a real working studio? Now we've got feature animation here. Like we're sort of bringing this all home here, and this is going to be sort of the East Coast version of the Walt Disney Studios out in California. And you might see celebrities. You can try your hand, pardon the pun, at drawing. You can play games. You can be part of the excitement and the action. And again, that sort of changed focus a little bit over the years. But 2001 was definitely a year where a lot of that was very much going on.
Definitely. I mean, even down to the entertainment where they launched the Stars and Motorcars parade, where it was, even if it was the characters and and celebrities who happened to be there that day, you had that going on that year to bring that sense of Hollywood full circle.
Right, and I hinted to it, so let's sort of talk about it here, and we'll talk about how another attraction at the studios helped sort of kick this off as well, too. I mentioned the 100 Years of Magic celebration that started that year, and that was really not about the studios. It wasn't celebrating a movie. It wasn't, your 100 years of magic. This was about changing the focus of what the celebration was and bringing to light not just the company and its intellectual property and new offerings, but it really was about, this is 100 years of Walt Disney.
Absolutely, and in a time where kids believe Walt Disney is just a figurehead like, Colonel Sanders or Ronald McDonald, they didn't recognize him as a real person. This was a way to reintroduce his history and his legacy to everyone, and it was such a great event and brought about several things that I know you and I love to this day and still are places we could spend all of our time.
And I'm sure a lot of people walked in and said, "Oh, 100 years of magic! Wow, I can't believe Walt Disney's, I can't believe Disneyland's been around for 100 years, or the company's been around for 100 years." They didn't necessarily make that connection. And while they did integrate Walt to a certain degree into parades, there was sort of the Walt on the bicycle, sort of with the canvas at one point. This really was about the new attraction that they opened up, which was Walt Disney One Man's Dream. I'm sorry, it was this interactive multimedia gallery, rare artifacts celebrating the life of Walt, right? Not about necessarily all of his accomplishments, but even going early on. And you sort of followed in his footsteps in his virtual timeline about his life and legacy. And for a lot of people, Ryan, geeks like us especially, this was our real first chance for them to let us take a look at rare, never before seen props and models and sketches and like 400 artifacts and paintings and storyboards and models and costumes and set pieces, and then obviously followed up by the 15-minute tribute film hosted by Julie Andrews. But this was kind of the first time the archives was like, okay, we're going to sort of show you our Raiders of the Lost Ark warehouse and bring some of these things out that maybe Walt doesn't necessarily touch. Some things are reproductions, obviously, but this is where Walt grew up. This is the kind of the environment that he worked on. These were the models that he looked at and approved to get things built. This is look, I think Granny's Cabin is the coolest thing ever. And not because of still however many years later, how intricate and detailed it is, but, Walt Disney's literal handprints and fingerprints are all over that because he built it himself.
Yeah, and I always disappointed when people rush through that and they don't take the time to really understand what they're looking at and to really internalize it and appreciate it. But one of my favorite pastimes to go when I'm in One Man's Dream is to actually follow the different storylines, because that's how they plotted this out as some of the animation pieces, some of the live action pieces, some of the what his futuristic visions were of things, and they plotted them all the way back to his formative years, and so you can actually go through and zigzag along one specific branch of Walt's life and career. And I love to just follow those specific pieces at one time and then go back and start a whole nother thread and follow those through to conclusion. And you just see how he worked and how he thought. And, and for me, things like the costumes from Zorro, I will just sit there and, marvel over the incredible detail to, the craftsmanship there. And it was on a black and white small screen, but it was so important to get it right.
And it's one, too, that they have continued to update, not necessarily wholesale, ripping it all out and starting fresh. But when you come back, and again, most guests, come back to Walt Disney World maybe every 3 to 5 years or so, you never know when there might be a new vignette, something that's changed, new pieces that are put in there. Now we have, the scale model for New Fantasyland in the back, which is just spectacular to see the detail that goes into it. But again, it's celebrating. Look, this is a tradition that started with Walt Disney. Look at the models of Jungle Cruise and Peter Pan's Flight, how they were built so they can get a sense of what a guest would be seeing and sort of virtually walk through that. And I suffer the same frustration that you do. And actually, Jim Corcus and I'll link to it in the show notes. We did a full show all about Walt Disney One Man's Dream. We sort of did a virtual walkthrough and tour of it. And we commented at that point, too, how we saw so many guests either walking by it or rushing through it. It's like they're trying to, it's like trying to get from point A to point B like they do in the Magic Kingdom. They're trying to get to Space Mountain. They're trying to get to Big Thunder without slowing down to see the detail that is there and the story that's put there before him. And I love One Man's Dream, right? Not just because it's air conditioned and people say, oh, you can, they half jokingly say, oh, you can take a nap in the theater. No, I love it because of what and who it celebrates. And I think for a lot of people, it is their one and possibly only introduction into who Walt Disney was. And I hope that it fosters a continuing sense of interest, especially in young people, to say, oh, I didn't know this. I didn't know Walt struggled. I didn't know this is how young he was when he passed away from cancer. I want to learn more about how he got from building stuff as a kid and drawing as a kid to running the studio.
Because there are so many amazing resources out there now in terms of, online or in terms of novels and, and biographies about Walt. There's so many great films now and documentaries that you can get to that I'm with you. I hope it does create this sense of who was this person? I want to know more about these stories. I want to flesh out a full person in my mind. And, and you get that when you walk through, you get pieces of it, and they've kind of taken, like you say, the back section with New Fantasyland and turned it into the preview center almost, as it were, now, where we have New Fantasyland and maybe in the future we're going to see, the world of Pandora back there. And they're just showing how his legacy is continuing on. And it's a great way to tie together his entire life and, what he's left behind.
Yeah, and as if we didn't want to go bad enough, seeing the model of Tokyo Disney Sea mocking us from behind the glass, like just beckoning us to head out there. It's only a matter of time, my friend.
I was going to say, they put so many things there. I'm like, one day I'm going to, don't tempt me.
Yeah. It also makes me realize how incredibly untalented I am. And I can't even sculpt using Play-Doh, and they build this, incredibly detailed replica of Disney Sea and the Tree of Life and some of the other, New Fantasyland. So.
Right. Let me just put it in words. You know what? Let me write the description of what you're making. Like, that's what I got that. I'll handle that.
So with the growth and the expansion and the addition of One Man's Dream, things are changing also there at the studios too. I was so sad, and I kid you not, I was sad and I lamented the loss of another great man at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Because when Playhouse Disney Live on Stage, we lost Bear in the Big Blue House live on stage. And I will tell you, as a father, don't laugh at me, as a father who spent many a day and many a night watching and singing along with Bear and Luna and the Moon, I missed that show going. Of course, we can go back and talk about, the Soundstage Restaurant and the Catwalk Bar. But yeah, Bear in the Big Blue House ran from June 99 until August 2001, when the first incarnation of Playhouse Disney Live on Stage, which continues to be popular. And if you are obviously, a 42-year-old single guy, maybe you're not digging that as much as somebody that is going there with his family and has young kids, and they're getting up and they're dancing, and it's very interactive and it's fun. I like the show. My kids have sort of outgrown it to a certain degree. They almost, go just to watch as opposed to anything else. But I liked that being so family friendly, so toddler and young guest specific. Even if your kids, weren't old enough to speak and understand the visuals and the bubbles and the music and the lights, like that's something that's just built just for them.
I was gonna say, and I wasn't laughing actually because of what you're saying. I was laughing because, I'm that guy. I don't have kids yet, but I've been in preschool for my entire adult life. I'm working
as a teacher, not as a
teacher,
student, right? Okay.
Although, they teach me some things, but I have, and I would go and I would watch just to, because that is the environment that I surround myself with daily, that I wanted to go see it and I would go experience it. And you're right, it's so toddler centric, and it's one of those few pieces that is built to their level and is for them, and it's all the things that hold their attention and people they recognize, characters they recognize, and I miss Bear, but I would be that guy in the back of the room, mid-20s to early 30s, and why is that guy standing there? But it was fun to go watch and experience it, and then take some pictures and take them back to my kids and be like, look who I got to spend some time with. So.
And I'll correct myself and correct you to a certain degree too, because you know what? While that attraction was built for kids, it was built for the parents. Because if you don't have kids of your own yet, or maybe never will, or whatever, even if you go with friends' kids or nephews or nieces, your Walt Disney World and Disney park experiences changes radically when you bring children, because that attraction, like parades and some of the shows, is not necessarily for you to watch that show and be entertained, because you're watching your kids. You're watching your kids get up and dance. And look, I am not going to lie. I'm very transparent. I put myself out there. I cried more in Bear in the Big Blue House and Playhouse Disney Live on Stage than I probably did at anything else other than my 800th time of watching Rudy, because I watch my kids and I watch the expression on their face, and they're smiling, they're dancing, and they're looking back at you, for affirmation, like, oh my, look at how much fun I'm having. You melt, and I still go sometimes with friends or whatever, and I watch them and I watch their kids, and I'm like, that's it. That's what it's all about right there. That's what Walt wanted to see. He wanted to see not just parents and kids having fun together, but watching that reaction on parents' faces as they watch their children.
You're right. The excitement and the enthusiasm that you see with the young children, it's just infectious. I mean, you can't help but get wrapped up in it, and that is what it's there for. And I think a lot of us, we spend our adult years trying to find our way back to that, and it's so simple for them, and it's just finding that infectious nature of it and just letting go and going with it.
And they see these characters coming to life in front of them off TV, and then they go outside and get to meet them and hug some of them in the courtyard. I mean, it's just like, that's what they want, that's the experience for them. So let me sip off my very sentimental soapbox and move along before I embarrass myself any further. Let's move over to the Magic Kingdom, right? Let's move over because as long as we're talking, all right, I'm going to get back on my sentimental soapbox, because as long as we're talking about growth and expansion, the Magic Kingdom, Main Street grew in size and it grew in story as well, but we lost things along the way. And if you've listened to any of my, audio guides to Walt Disney World and the Main Street, I explain how as you walk down Main Street, you are moving forward in time and moving forward in story. And as business prospered and the town grew out from that town square out towards the plaza and the castle, the shops grew as well too, right? And Osh Popham's Emporium begins to grow, and he needs to expand farther down the street as well. But the Emporium, the real shop, needed to expand as well. They needed to annex more space on the west side of the street. So in 2001, after a very lengthy refurbishment, West Center Street, which is sort of that left side of the street across from the alleyway on the right-hand side, was removed as part of that growth of the town. And along with it went a few of those original shops. Like the original Harmony Barbershop was there when it used to sell shaving items and mustache cups. The facades for the Champion Cyclery, the Chinese Hand Laundry, and the livery stable were gone. The greenhouse was gone, it eventually became the flower shop and the clock shop and all that. And the one cool thing that I loved, and this, Ryan, when I thought of 2001, this was the thing that I thought of first. And I don't know why, because I remembered seeing it, because I didn't obviously live in Florida. I visited once every year or so. And seeing that change and that little alleyway, that very sort of quaint little alleyway gone, I remember the sign that said, as it was closed, it had the big green wall, and said it's something to the effect of, a bigger and better Emporium is coming for a new century. And I love the sort of double meaning there, because that new century was not just the real 2001, but in terms of story, it was 1899, moving on to 1900 and 1901, which is when Main Street USA's story takes place.
Right. Wave of the future, no matter which century you're turning at that point, is coming through with there. And, it is one of those things, whenever we lose the side streets, you do lose a little bit of that community. Like, oh yeah, right, I could go down this street and then make another left, and I could have a house right down here, or those kind of thought patterns. When they have to expand the Emporium, and it did need to grow, but at the same time, you're right. We lose these little corners, and you start wondering, where are these little shops? And it's becoming one big shop. And luckily, you get Harmony Barbershop moving up to a new home. But it's one of those great turns of the phrase. And
it's a silly, obscure, 99.999% of the guests don't ever see it. But again, as you move story-wise down Main Street USA, there are some of the facades that actually have representations of what year they were supposed to be established. And if you look at the old, quote-unquote, section of the Emporium, the red awning, it says like established, I think it's 1897, but this new section has a very small bluish turquoisey plaque that says that it was established in 1901. Again, coincidentally, the year Walt Disney was born. That's that little subtle nod specifically to Walt.
Yeah, and a year really celebrating Walt and his legacy. You know, it's nice to see the little pieces, and with Main Street being based off of Marceline in his hometown and that he grew up in. It's nice to see, tying those threads together.
Yeah. So moving through Magic Kingdom a little bit, the only sort of other really kind of big addition was the Magic Carpets of Aladdin. It opened in what was originally that open-air plaza of Adventureland, and I must say again, nostalgic that I am, I miss those old lava rock benches there. But this was sort of the Adventureland version of Dumbo. There is a whole story, again, attached to this about how this genie, they were digging there, and that's why there's jewels everywhere, and the genie pops out, and this whole sort of backstory that's alongside of it. But what I think it did add was, again, not just another great experience for younger guests, but it did introduce a very new sort of kinetic element to the land, which didn't really have very much of it. As you sort of walked through Adventureland, previously, it was very static. Now you've got color, you've got motion, you've got a little bit of life in there, which is one of the things that was noticeably absent, I think.
You have spinning camels now. But this was that area to me that looking back at 2001 and realizing this is when that happened. I was the citrus swirl king as a kid. Everyone loved their Dole Whips, but I loved my citrus swirls and the tiki room, and this was my corner of Adventureland. And when that came in, as much as I loved Aladdin, there was this certain part of me that was just like, why? Why did you take away my view? Why did you take away my lava benches? And then I was like, right, okay, floating benches. That's what I have now. I have floating benches. But it did. It added a little bit of that kinetic energy, like you were saying, to the park. It did add, also because it's a very, very unshaded area. You have the spinning camels, so you're getting a little bit of that cool mist from the camels if you want to go stand in front of them.
And the other thing too, look, Dumbo was so incredible, and continues to be so much so that they built a second one, so incredibly popular that they needed that, right? You needed some more of these younger, guest-friendly type attractions, right? Not every little kid may dig the Tiki Room, or Pirates might have been scary. They needed something that was a ride for them. Look, that hub and spoke attraction was so popular that Animal Kingdom got one too. Right? Chester and Hester's Dino-Rama opens. They get Primeval Whirl and Triceratops Spin in, again, sort of a very different venture, not just for, the parks, but for Animal Kingdom, this Midway-themed area, right? In the spirit of these roadside carnivals, this allowed Animal Kingdom to, again, look, you've got to remember who your demographic, who are the guests that are coming there. You have to appeal to some of these younger visitors who are looking for more rides and games while still sort of building on, look, there's still a lot of momentum going on from that park's opening just 3 years earlier. So while it seems like it's a very simple roadside Midway, and then again, I'll try and link to this in the show notes. We did a full show years ago about Dino-Rama, which people, when they first saw it, laughed. They said, how can you talk about Dino-Rama for an hour or so? There's a very in-depth storyline here that was crafted by the Imagineers. Absolutely.
It's really, how can you not talk about it for at least an hour? And of course, that's coming from us, so that's right. Take that with a grain of salt. But you have all these experiences in Animal Kingdom where you're going to have to take time. You're going to be walking, and yes, do kids want to see animals? Absolutely, because that's what they're going to take away in the end. But they're going to need those interludes. They're going to need those times where they can shut their brains down, they can shut their feet down, and just ride or just sit and play and not think about it. And so that's what Dino-Rama gives you, is these games that they can play, and whether or not they win the giant stuffed dinosaur or not, they have something that they can experience, and then you give them the controls with Triceratops Spin, and you have an hour that they'll burn real quickly and give you them that time to reboot and you that time to reboot.
Yeah, and look, when this opened, there was certainly a lot of online criticism, because I don't think people got it. They're like, what is Disney doing? They're just literally throwing up these junky-looking, off-the-shelf type of rides of attractions. But why? Why are they not spending the time in them? what they're not getting was it was very tongue-in-cheek. It was very deliberate to make it look that way, to make it look kitschy like that, to come up with this entire backstory of who Chester and Hester were and who these characters were and why it looked like that. It wasn't cheaply done. It wasn't quickly done. It was done very purposely because it's what was wanted by guests. You know, kids like that hub and spoke attractions. Parents want to be able to take their kids and let them play games like that and do that. So if they create this very elaborate backstory that ties into that land, I think very well. So I think you have to sort of get it, air quotes, in terms of what Disney was trying to do.
Definitely, this is the same year that they changed Countdown to Extinction to Dinosaur, and kids want to see dinosaurs. Kids want to experience dinosaurs. They love dinosaurs. They may not love the dinosaurs that's going to eat their car. So let's find the dinosaurs that they can deal with. Let's find the dinosaurs they can play with. And you're right, it's not cheaply done. You look at that, even just looking down at your feet, at that pavement, that Florida kind of sediment pavement where it's been cracked and aged. That's not easy. That wasn't like it was just sitting there for them. They had to create that. And so they did. They took a lot of time to make it look cheap, to make it look as if it was a roadside attraction. But the depth and level of detail there is astounding.
Yeah, look, you need to bring a sense of whimsy into the parks a little bit, and the message of Disney's Animal Kingdom was important, and it was serious, and it was one that was more about, I don't want to say educating first, but it was about awareness, right? So for little kids, they're like, hey man, my 4-year-old didn't want to be aware of conservation. They wanted to go ride rides. And so that's why I understand the gap that was trying to fill in while still sort of carrying that message forward. And look, they took, again, this momentum of Disney's Animal Kingdom outside the parks, right? They wanted to bring that experience and the views and some awesome food from inside Disney's Animal Kingdom out to guests at the resorts. So that same month that Chester and Hester's open, Disney's Animal Kingdom Lodge opens, right? And this is all about, again, it's about environment, right? You've got these views of the savannas. You could watch the animals roaming freely right outside your balconies, which was so very different, and open up a whole new world of possibilities for guests than any of the other resorts.
Yeah, I mean, just from everything from the roof on down at Animal Kingdom Lodge, it's just extraordinary. I mean, we could spend a whole episode just talking about the food of this resort. They went out so clearly to define the menus and to define these cultural icons in terms of food. The rooms are the same way. They didn't build this as a giant high rise. They built it very, very consciously low to the ground, so you'd have those views, you'd have those natural experiences. And yeah, if you're on the outside of those horseshoes, are you gonna have to walk a little bit to your room? Yes, but the views that you're going to get along the way and once you get there are bar none some of the best on property.
Absolutely. And again, and look, Animal Kingdom Lodge, like all the resorts, deserve their own, and we'll give it its own segment to talk more about that. But let's sort of continue. As long as we're talking about resorts, let's talk about a change over at another one of my favorite resorts on the moderate side, because this same year, Disney's Port Orleans and Dixie Landings resorts, and I'm using air quotes as if you could see me again, they merged to become a single sort of property as Port Orleans. It's Port Orleans Resort Riverside and Port Orleans French Quarter. And look, beignets and Yeehaw Bob, it does not get any better than that.
No, it doesn't get any better. Actually, my dad was just at Riverside last week and was sending me pictures, and because he wanted me to hate him apparently. But yeah, they merged into one entity. You lose, French Quarter loses its bike rentals, its Surrey rentals, its sit down restaurant. But because it becomes one entity, you're just a stroll down the Sassagoula from Yeehaw Bob, from boat rights, and it really does extend that theme of this low country kind of feel, whether it's the plantations, the city district of Rivers or of French Quarter, to straight into the bayou with the Alligator Bayou section.
Yeah, and again, we've talked in the past. I'll try and remember to link to it in the show notes. We did a very detailed look at the backstory of Port Orleans and the changes over the years. But I look, Riverside to me is a hidden gem. Even if you're not staying there, you go spend, go there at dusk. You do a Surrey bike. You take the boat. I think Boat Rights is an overlooked, awesome restaurant.
Oh, absolutely.
Jambalaya. You roll or stroll, whatever it may be, into Yeehaw Bob. There's also great food at the River Roost Lounge. Bob is one of the best shows you will find on property. That guy kills it every night. He's like 113 years old and gives it's like his first time ever doing it. He will remember your name 10 years from now, I promise you. And it's fun for the whole family. It's free. And it's one of those things that I think for me makes Riverside and all of Port Orleans so very attractive.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge fan of the Alligator Bayous, like the whole resort, but Alligator Bayou is where I find myself drawn to. And I don't know if it's, to me, on that Fort Wilderness kid, so that's kind of like the moderate level of like Fort Wilderness experience, or what it is, but the whole place, I just love it, wandering through it and listening to the nature that's around you and seeing all the little details that distinguish each of the buildings. And yeah, it's the whole area is just incredible. And I could spend, hours on end talking about it too.
Yeah. And, and look, as we're talking about these things that are coming or came to Walt Disney World Resort in 2001, they weren't just big in terms of lands or resorts or attractions. Every single park either got a new or updated parade, right? We mentioned before, Magic Kingdom got Share a Dream Come True. Over at Epcot, Tapestry of Nations evolves a little bit to become Tapestry of Dreams, which I love that parade and the music. My God, I wish they would bring that back. Over at the studios, you mentioned Stars and their cars come out in the Stars and Motor Cars Parade, and Animal Kingdom gets the Jammin' Jungle Parade.
And on top of all that, that year also saw the Main Street Electrical Parade leaving again and Spectrum Magic coming back for its second run.
And you could some people either like that or don't like that. Depends.
I left that ambiguous for a reason.
Right. I'm no, I'm not going to editorialize. You either like the fact that Spectro came and went or whatever it may be. But again, all those, there's that kinetic energy. There's that element coming on. There's something to sort of celebrate all the time. Look, there's new events or expanding of events. Flower and Garden looking once again to making it more about the families and kids. There's a lot of garden activities for kids, live music, celebrity chefs, culinary demonstrations. We talked about one of our favorite Star Wars weekends, right? There's 4 Star Wars weekends. Carrie Fisher is there. Like Princess Leia comes to Star Wars weekends. Of course, now this year we get Mark Hamill, which is pretty awesome. But, Kenny Baker was there. Peter Mayhew was there. Warwick Davis was there. Look, they liked Star Wars so much, they would go out and buy the company about 12 years later.
Who doesn't love Star Wars that much that they wouldn't go buy the company if they had the chance?
Super Soap Weekends was there. That only lasted about 7 more years. That sort of, I don't know if it ran out of steam or ran out of interest, whatever it was. But they also were expanding some of the seasonal events, right? The holidays got bigger and better. Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party at the time was a record 11 nights. I think now it's 2014. I think Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party runs for 76 nights or something like that.
Right. This point we start in July.
Right. It's Easter time, so they're starting to put up the Halloween decorations. There's 45 days of the Osborne family spectacle of lights at the studios and 31 days of holidays around the world at Epcot. So the holiday time, there's more going on. It's all included with admission. There's a lot more to sort of draw you down there. And maybe all of a sudden families start to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should go to Disney World for the holidays. Maybe we should spend Christmas or Hanukkah or New Year's, whatever it is, down in Walt Disney World.
Yeah, you have all these reasons now to do that. They're supersizing effectively your experience. Yeah, you're going to pay a little bit more for your room. Your ticket's going to cost you the same price, and there are so many more events to see with the holidays, with all the great entertainment that's only available for at that point about a month that year. It left everyone questioning. Well, we used to go in the summer. Maybe we should go in the winter.
Yeah, there's you're getting more bang for your dollar. You're getting more value for your dollar because of how much more is added on to your experience. And actually, speaking of the holidays, we were talking before about broadcast. Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve actually broadcast a little bit from Walt Disney World, and that was actually the highest ratings that show ever had in history. So there's Disney, keep doing it. Obviously, we want to see more from Walt Disney World, especially during other than just the Christmas Day parade.
Right.
I think it's important that we have to note something that was not a bright spot in history, but from a Walt Disney World perspective, the way it was handled, the resort closed for only the second time in history as a result of what happened on September 11th. And while they opened the next day, according to regular operating hours, I wasn't there, but we need to sort of mention how many people commended Disney for just how well it handled an incredibly delicate situation for its guests, to not have them panic, to accommodate them, to bring entertainment to the resorts, to answer their questions, to keep things safe. Look, security instantly became an issue. And how do you have 50,000 people, whatever it is in the Magic Kingdom, and try and sort of get them out in an orderly fashion without making them be panicked when potentially, obviously they had to think, hey, are we maybe a target? Are we maybe a target here? And I've heard nothing, for the most part, other than great responses from people who were there, who did go through it, whether it was cast members or guests or executives or whatever it may be, the way that resort was prepared and handled that so as not to, frighten guests or to upset them, and to accommodate them however they needed to during and after the incident as well.
Definitely. I mean, every big organization has their emergency preparedness plan, but you never know how it's going to go until you actually have to implement. And they did. They were able to get everyone out very calmly. They did not close the resorts. They said, no, you're still welcome at your resorts. Please come back. We're going to take care of you. And they made, in what was a very tense situation, what could have been very, very traumatic for a lot of people, it was handled with incredible care, with incredible dedication. And I'm like you, I've not yet heard one thing to criticize how they handled that day.
Yeah. So, and again, without going, too much into it, I think it really speaks volumes about not just the company, but the cast members, and the cast members and the sensitivity and the training that they underwent before that. So, but look, 2001 was really about, I think it was about one thing we mentioned before. It was about Walt Disney, right? The One Man's Dream attraction at the studios was the tip of the celebratory iceberg. It was the biggest party that Disney had thrown, I think, yet as part of that 100 Years of Magic property-wide commemoration and celebration that really sort of, they wanted to make people realize for the first time about not just the life and legacy, but also the different look. Walt did not have an easy. This did not come easy to Walt. These things did not get made by magic. He had a lot of trials and tribulations and went bankrupt and fought with people and and it was hard. So it was about Walt, but in terms of Walt Disney World, I think it very much was a year of growth. Obviously, some sobering moments and celebrations. And I think, again, of all the things that they did, of all the expansion, all the changes, it was about that. And I think, and what I hoped then and now was that celebration, that attraction, that 100 Years of Magic, those little details that they put in there would inspire others by his optimism. Maybe if they make one kid or one adult take a risk the way he did, or find their own creative inspiration in his story, then that's really what it was about. Not to sort of overly wax poetic, but I think that's what it was. It was meant to sort of not just educate people, but hopefully inspire them as well.
I think you're absolutely right, and I know we both have lessons that we've taken from Walt into our own lives, and we found it on our own. But with these 100 Years of Magic, how many more doors, and with One Man's Dream over the years, how many other children have seen that, have felt, I came from that same kind of, downtrodden background. I can really succeed if I really put my mind to it, if I really drive myself. How many people have taken away that message of hope of I can become whatever I put my mind to?
Listen, there is something very, there's something very real about hearing him say, I came to California with $40 in my pocket. Okay, $40 back at that time is probably $100 now, but still, he did it. It's not like he came here with a silver spoon in his mouth. He worked really hard.
Right, with a cardboard suitcase and just and a pencil and some paper. He chose his destiny in that regard.
Absolutely. So, listen, it was always fun. It's always fun to sort of take a look back into the pages of the timeline of Walt Disney World and think back to how different it is now. How similar is it? How different is it from the way it was 15 years ago. Some of the things that we got, some of the things that we lost, a few of the things that we miss. Once again, I go back to the Tapestry of Nations parade. But, that is, Walt said many times that Walt Disney World and Disneyland were never meant to be museums. And that's why it's continuing to grow and develop. And thankfully so. So we always have something different to talk about. And that's why I want to have you come back again. We'll get aboard the Wayback Machine. We'll explore some of these other fun things I know we've been tossing around. A few of the obscure things that maybe not everybody got to see along the way that we sort of laugh sentimentally about. As always, Ryan P. Wilson, you are just knocking it out of the park day after day over at MainStreetGazette.com. It's MainStGazette.com. And I think on the Twitter, you are also at MainStGazette.
That's me. Instagram, Twitter, all those good places.
You're all over the place. Walt would be proud at your the media empire you have built over at the Main Street Gazette. From the early days at the Holly, Vermont Realty, look where you've come now.
Exactly. I just want to show. I'm gonna teach him how to tweet. One of these days, Walt will be fine with it. We'll be good.
You know what? There's an interesting thing to think about. If Walt Disney had Twitter,
what would he be saying?
What would Walt's first tweet be?
I went back and looked at my first tweet this week, and it wasn't as groundbreaking as I had thought it would.
I don't think anybody's tweet was that first epic, look back and look at how, deeply philosophical I was on my first tweet. It was, look, I'm in the bathroom. It's something, not that that's what my first tweet was.
I have Twitter.
Yeah.
Things.
Remember when I used to have free time that I actually did things with instead of looking at Twitter? So yeah, I wonder, what would Walt Disney's first tweet be? That would be an interesting experiment. So, Ryan, my friend, thank you always as much. I appreciate you coming back.
Oh, I enjoy it every single time.
All right, buddy. It's time for our Walt Disney World Trivia Question of the Week, where I invite you to test your knowledge of Walt Disney World history or see how well you pay attention to the details of what you see. And like this week, in what you hear, you can then enter for a chance to win a Disney prize package. Before we get to this week's question, let's go back, review last week's, and select our winner. So last week, I said that one of my favorite attractions is still Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress, and I love so many of the interesting, funny, and sometimes a little bit more obscure references in the attraction. And one of them was the subject of last week's question, because I asked you to fill in the blanks for this line from Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress. Don't worry, Rover. She didn't mean real dogs. Besides, it's not going to rain today. My blank isn't acting up. Once again, congratulations to the hundreds of you that entered and answered this one correctly because you filled in the blank with the word lumbago. So his lower back wasn't bothering him, and it means there's no rain coming. Again, I took all the correct entries, randomly selected one, and last week's winner of all 6 of my virtual audio tours of the Magic Kingdom and a copy of my Doom book, 102 Ways to Save Money for and at Walt Disney World, is Jim Codis. So Jim, congratulations. I sent you an email with a link to download all the guides and the book. If you played last week and didn't win, thanks for entering, but don't worry, because here's your next opportunity to enter in this week's Walt Disney World Trivia Challenge. So on the show this week, we talked about Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Play It over at Disney's MGM Studios and how close it was to the original, very popular TV version. If you ever watched the show, you remember that there were 3 lifelines that you could use on the TV show: 50-50, Ask the Audience, and Phone a Friend. Well, the Disney MGM Studios version had 50-50 and Ask the Audience, but instead of Phone a Friend, what option did the Studios game show version offer? You have until Sunday, March 30th at 11:59 p.m. to email your answer to contest@wdwradio.com. Again, you're playing for all 6 of my virtual audio walking tours of the Magic Kingdom and a copy of my new book, 102 Ways to Save Money for and at Walt Disney World. So good luck and have fun. That's going to do it for this week's show. Thanks so much for taking the time and tuning in this and every week. in addition to the podcast, which you can subscribe to over in iTunes. Please come by and visit the all-new, completely updated WDWRadio.com. There you'll find new videos, daily blog posts, contests, our discussion forums, the free email newsletter, and WDW Radio app for your mobile device, and lots more. Also, our events page full of events, including upcoming Meets of the Month in Walt Disney World and other events on the road. I'll have information posted about our next Meet of the Month in Walt Disney World for April, where we spend an evening with Yeehaw Bob over at Disney's Port Orleans Resort. Also visit my website over at LouMongello.com for other meetups, not Disney related, but some other on-the-road events while I'm speaking at conferences and schools around the country. Also, if you like the show, please be sure and tune in every Wednesday night for WDW Radio Live. I do a live video broadcast and interactive chat where we discuss this week's Walt Disney World news. You guys can comment and ask questions in the chat room, and then we stay on for a few hours longer to talk about just about anything at all. Again, that's Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, over at WDWRadioLive.com. Thanks as always to my partners and sponsors, including MouseFanTravel.com. It's who I recommend because it's who I use, whether you're going to Disney World, Land, Cruise Line, Adventures by Disney, Aulani, or anywhere that you feel like traveling. Becky and her agents give you the best possible prices, all available discounts. Most importantly, they give you an incredible level of personal service at no cost to you. Again, visit them over at MouseFanTravel.com. If you want to get some Disney magic delivered right to your door, visit CelebrationsPress.com. Find out how you can subscribe and order back issues of Celebrations magazine. And as always, my friends, and you are my friends, whether we have met yet or not, all I ask is that if you like the show, please help spread the word. Let others know about it. Tweet out that you're listening. Share links and come by and comment over on Facebook. Please rate and review the show and the apps over in iTunes. Also, if you want to connect with me, I'm at Lou Mongello on Twitter, Facebook.com/Lou Mongello. You can follow my personal profile there or visit Facebook.com/WDW Radio to like the WDW Radio page. You can also find out about the running team, some of the other things we have going on as well. I'm also on Pinterest and Instagram at Lou Mongello. And if you have a question, maybe you want answered on the show, you can email me, lou@WDWRadio.com, or call the voicemail. Be heard on the air, 407-900-9391. Also, I'm purging a lot of my Disney and Star Wars and other geeky collectibles up on eBay. I have 10 new auctions every week that start and end on Sunday nights. To see and bid on this week's items, visit WDWRadio.com/eBay, where my eBay seller name is Second Star Media. And finally, and most importantly, I want to say a sincere thank you to all of you for taking the time to tune in every week and to send me emails and to come to the Meets of the Month. And really just allowing me to do what I do and share my passion for Disney with you through the show and the site and so many other ways. I lead an incredibly blessed life because of you, and I really do appreciate your friendship and support. And I want you to feel the same way I do every morning. You're excited for what the day has to bring. So sometimes you can't always wait for the perfect time to start doing what you love. Sometimes you have to make a dare to jump and have faith and always keep moving forward. So I hope you guys have a great week this week. Until next time, see ya.
Hi, Lou. This is Anna from Kansas City, Missouri. I just got back from Disneyland, and I just listened to your podcast about Space Mountain, and my whole family was amazed at how much better the Disneyland version was than Disney World. We loved it to pieces and rode it many, many times. And I would be really interested if you did a show comparing the two parks. Pirates of the Caribbean I felt was better in Disneyland, and some other things. So I look forward to you doing that show in Disneyland. Thanks. Bye.
You've got a friend in me. Yeah.